Greetings, students. Kat here. Welcome to week 3, contextualized instruction. So I'm going to take myself out of the picture actually, so there is no distractions on the slides. Let's talk about contextualized. What does that mean? Why do our students need their English contextualized? Well, for one thing, they can't understand humor if they don't have the context, and they could become the butt of humor. So this top cartoon would not be nearly as funny if it was a couple of humans, and the one on the left had her arms outstretched. But when it's a couple of T-Rexes with their short little arms, it's cute and funny. Or the bottom cartoon, which I really like, gives you insights into my sense of humor. This is Why Context Matters at the Stephen King Diner. We have a customer walking into the diner, and we see that the special today is shepherd's pie, except that, we have a couple of sheep eating pie, and we have another sheep behind the counter. He's the cook. And on the floor, I see some glasses, a hat, and a shepherd's crook. So the whole idea of shepherd's pie takes on a whole new meaning in this very dark humor in this context. Our students also need to be able to understand context to be able to navigate through media messages. This went viral not long after Barack Obama was first elected president. It was posted by a mayor of a city in California who, I'm happy to report, was subsequently fired from his job for doing this. Now, if I came from a foreign country with no background knowledge in slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, racism, I could think this is just a gorgeous farm of melons at the White House. But as soon as I understand the context of an African-American president sitting in the White House and the racist connection of watermelon and African-Americans, then I can see this as the racist message that it really is. I've got several teaching strategies for you this week. One of them is a KWL chart. You may be familiar with them. It's a very learner-centered activity. It helps you activate your schema. It establishes your need to know, and it personalizes the learning event for you. This is what your KWL chart looks like, and in a minute you're going to pause the video and go get it. When you get it, fill out the K and the W columns first. K is what you already know about contextualized instruction, and the W is what you want to know. Do this before finishing this video, and do this before doing the reading or any of the other assignments this week. And then later in the week, fill out the L column with what you learned. This would be the information that was new for you. The other strategy I have for you this week is a skeleton outline. Skeleton outlines provide scaffolding, they provide context, it creates a study guide for the topic that your students can use later, it creates a focus for their listening, and it helps them with note-taking skills. This is what your skeleton outline looks like. I've provided some of the information, and your job is to listen and fill in the blanks. You can't do this, however, without watching the rest of this video. So I do recommend download this one and print it so you have it and you can fill it out by hand. And so with that, I'm going to wait for you here. Pause this video, go into D2L, and download those two documents, the KWL and the skeleton outline. Fill out the first two columns of the KWL chart, get your skeleton outline ready, and when you've got all that, come back and resume this video. I will wait for you here with my dog Coco. Welcome back. To define contextualized instruction, let's go down to that root of context. I like this second definition from dictionary.com that calls it the set of circumstances or facts that surround a particular event or situation. How would you define it in relation to adult ESL? Do you have a mental image of context? If you like, pause this video and take a couple of minutes to sketch out a simple graphic or a brief description of a graphic that might depict context in this regard. Here are some graphics that come to my mind. I can think of context as the floor or foundation under my lesson. I can think of it as the skeletal fabric, the structural fabric of it, or I could think of it as the core that drives everything about my lesson, including the motivation of my learners. Context underlies everything. It underlies your curriculum, not the other way around. You're going to teach those skills and competencies, but teach them within a context. Any motivations that the students have, they're going to be motivated because it's a context that has meaning to them. Okay, to your skeleton outline. Contextualized instruction comes out of the constructivist movement. Here are 4 very famous constructivists. You can read about all 4 of these men on the wiki page I provided in week 2. Jean Piaget, Lev Vygotsky, John Dewey, and Jerome Bruner. Basically, constructivist theory says that reason is the primary source of knowledge and that reality is constructed rather than discovered. In other words, the primary tenets of constructivism say we construct our knowledge. It cannot be transmitted. It cannot be imparted to you. I can't give you the knowledge. All I can do is give you the information, and you're going to construct your own knowledge and your own meaning based on your experiences and who you are. I like that next to the bottom quote, our cognitive capacities become more complex in response to our reactions to the world around us. In other words, the learning event becomes deeper, more enriching because of the context. And always remember, reflection is crucial for constructing meaning. You need to give students time to reflect on what they have learned. In contextualized instruction, priority is given to the development of meaning and understanding. And without those 2 things, our students are fish out of water. So, enough with the boring grammar drills. Stop having students conjugate verbs that has no meaning. They won't use the language better because they can fill out a grammar chart perfectly. You've got to keep it real. Learning should occur or be situated in realistic settings. Problems are realistic to learners and common to everyday life. The instructional language is anchored in realistic problem solving. Testing should be integrated into the task, not a separate activity. And the teacher's language should be natural and authentic. Go ahead and rewind the video if you need to repeat this slide. Whole language instruction supports contextualized instruction. Whole language theory says that language is not the sum of its many discernible and discrete parts, but it's presented in whole, with interaction between the oral skills of listening and speaking and the written skills of reading and writing. Whole language employs a learner's world knowledge. So we've got 2 students at the bottom. The one on the left is trying to spell the word table. He only has a mental image of these symbols, and he doesn't even have them all, but he has absolutely no connection between those symbols and the real world. The student, on the other hand, on the right side, has got both the word and a good mental image of what a table is. Here are some examples of whole language teaching, and you will see all of these in action in any adult ed ESL program in Colorado. Cooperative learning, participatory learning, student-centered learning, and the integration of all 4 language skills. That, in a nutshell, is contextualized instruction. So, some typical contexts in adult ESL here. It's always going to include context that our adult students need to be able to function in American society. At work, going to the doctor, shopping, getting around town, what we used to call survival skills. They're the life skills. If you go overseas, it's going to be less about the life skills and more about the social language. If the students are studying to become English teachers themselves, it's going to be down and dirty grammar, syntax, pronunciation, and the need for context is even is stronger even then. They really need the context to make it meaningful for them. Context is everything. Without context, your lesson is a dry, barren desert. Here are 2 language objectives given to me by real teachers for real classes in real lesson plans, and in both cases I had to ask the teacher, where is the context? So what did the theorists and practitioners say? I'm just going to quote the Frary one here. He said, when literacy is taught as a collection of decontextualized, meaningless skills, starting with letters and sounds divorced from any significance in the learner's lives, they cannot use their minds or bring anything to the learning process and therefore become the objects of instruction. He was ahead of his time. Go ahead and pause the video if you want to read those bottom two quotes. So a key term from now on is going to be schema. Schema is what you already know about a subject. It's your background knowledge, your previous experience. Remember, we're going to construct new knowledge on our old knowledge. So anytime you are introducing a new context or a new concept, you need to activate your students' schema. Krashen says, contextualization involves inventing a realistic context for the presentation of a grammatical rule or vocabulary item. Emphasis on realistic. So what else does Krashen say? Well, that's another strategy I brought for you this week, using mystery and treasure hunts and puzzles. So to solve the mystery, you have to find the puzzle and solve the puzzle. To do that, you could go back to D2L. You don't have to do it now. You can do it when the video's over. Find this picture of Stephen Krashen and just click on him to start your path to solving the mystery. Now be culturally cognizant that with the context that you bring to your classroom. You really probably can't go wrong, but be careful how you do it. So some immigrant families, like the one on the right, they might relate to that family on the left, this white Anglo-Saxon family playing Scrabble in their living room in their big palatial home. But not all of your students come from those kinds of backgrounds. Their idea of drinking orange juice together in the kitchen is going to look very different from that family in the upper right. So be culturally cognizant and just know that they bring their backgrounds into the learning environment, and it will enrich it for everybody. Now, one of your tasks this week is going to be to think about context for a specific language objective. In D2L, you'll find a blank mind map. Basically, all you have is the circle. And I've provided some language objectives. My example here is the present progressive verb form. Pick a language objective and write that in the center here. And then create a bunch of spider legs coming out of the circle and think of some context for that language objective. So for present progressive, I thought of family and friends, work, making plans, because we use present progressive for the future form, as a future form, or clothing. We have very specific orders of descriptors when we're describing clothing. So if I wanted to practice what is he wearing, I would expect the student to say, he is wearing a large blue and white striped t-shirt. So very specific order of descriptors for that. Do a similar thing with your mind map. Create some context for the language objective and then bring that to class on September 9th. This week's homework, read chapter 3 and do your KWL. Do the skeleton outline you finished. There's a new video from New American Horizons for you to watch. Your mind map, which you'll bring to class on the 9th, the discussion, and the reflective journal. Betsy says, learners need to develop their linguistic competence, but it should be done within broad, real-life contexts. In other words, guys, keep it real. So I have provided the resources for this slideshow. I've also provided in D2L the reflection form, which you can download and fill out if you like. Remember, that is always for you, but you could also use your KWL. So with that, I'm going to say bye-bye, and I will see you in class on the 9th.